Hello and welcome to a live Deprogram with Keri Smith. I'm your host, Keri. I'm happy to be here and thank you guys for being patient. I had some computer problems with memory, so I had to free up more memory to be able to do this. I'm Gen X, but I'm a boomer when it comes to technology. So I apologize and I thank you for your patience. Welcome if you're new here. This is a live show that I do on Mondays and Fridays at 1 o'clock Central. Sometimes we have guests. Sometimes lately, the past year, for especially during the election season, I've been doing a lot by myself, just looking at the news, talking about it, and trying to present things, individual topics in a concise manner with a leftist audience in mind, or people who identify themselves as being on the left. And I'm going to go ahead and try and do that again today when it comes to the issue of farmers and the war on farmers. I titled this episode The War on Farmers because I do think that's what's happening. I think there is a global war on private property ownership and on farmers specifically. And we're going to look at what happened in the UK this weekend and try and make sense of it for specifically for people on the left who may not understand what's going on or who may not even be aware of this news, especially if you're in the United States. You may not be aware of what's been happening in European countries like the Netherlands in regards to farmland and in the UK. So we're going to look at that. Hello. I see some familiar faces in the chat. We are simulcasting today on Rumble, and they have a new feature that I'm trying out where you don't have to enter each video individually. It's supposed to just automatically stream there now instead of me having to it was a more complicated process before. So if you are watching at Rumble, leave a comment leave a Rumble rant, leave a comment, whatever they call them at Rumble, leave a comment, and I want to see if it shows up here at StreamYard because it's supposed to. I'm supposed to finally be able to see what people are saying on Rumble. So we'll see if that, again, I boomer head when it comes to technology, so we'll see if that actually worked. Hey, the 286 project. Hey, this is my friend Chris Ackers. Go and check out his channel, give it a look-see. Really great guy. Good to see you here, Chris. He says, "Hi, Keri. Apparently 20,000 people turned out for the farmers' protests in London this week." I know. I've been watching some of the news here in the States, Chris. Chris is in the UK. So it's good to see him here. And please, Chris, feel free to correct me if I get anything wrong. I've been watching here from the States, and I'm going to try and cover this in a way that would be good for everyone, but primarily I'm thinking of people on the left in America. That's what I'm thinking of right now. Good to see you. Oh, great. Davina Duckworth is on Rumble. Look at this. The Rumble rants are showing up here. How amazing is this? Technology moving right ahead. That's amazing. Okay. Channel Julio is also over at Rumble. Rumbleina, he says. Good to see you. I'm so glad that's working. Emo Trash, how convenient of you to start streaming when I totally told myself I was going to write an essay that's definitely not due next week. Procrastination, I get you. I get it. This is one of my vices that I struggle with as well. In fact, at the Governor's School for Science and Math, which was the science and math high school I went to in South Carolina, in the senior yearbook, one of the what do they call it at the end of the year when you vote on your classmates? One of the superlatives, I guess, I got senior superlatives was I was voted biggest procrastinator. And they did a photo shoot with me playing with Play-Doh and watching Twin Peaks and doing everything else except my essay. So I struggle with this. I feel you. Okay. I'm easily distracted person. Okay, we're going to get into this. We're talking about farmland. We're talking about what I believe is a war on farmers. And as Chris mentioned in the chat, there was a huge protest that happened in the UK this week. Why? because the new government there is proposing a new inheritance tax on farmers, on farmland, specifically on any estate that's valued at over 1 million pounds. They want to tax them. So basically, when the farmer dies, instead of just being able to pass on the farm, the family farm, and keep it in the business through generations like they've been doing, they want to tax the farm 20% when the farmer dies. And they want to do this each time the farmer dies. So imagine through the generations how much of a financial hardship this is going to be for a farming family to be able to keep the farm in the business. And of course, this does affect farms, the majority of farms, because the majority of farms are producing enough for the population to eat that they are valued at over 1 million. However, a lot of them are cash poor. A lot of the farms are cash poor. And so to be able to pay this tax, they're going to have to sell off farm equipment. It's going to affect their farm. It's going to affect whether they can even continue staying in the business or if they have to sell out. And as we're going to see later in this episode, there's some interesting folks that the UK government is talking about partnering with, one of them being BlackRock, to come in and buy up this farmland. Interesting, right? So the farmers are protesting, much like the farmers did in the Netherlands. And they're being called all kinds of names. This is going to be happening in every country now in the West. Just imagine it. Every time the farmers protest, just like when the truckers protested in Canada, the Freedom Convoy, and said, hey, we're against government authoritarianism telling us what medical choices we have to make. You don't get to say that, right? They got called right wing for that. It's a very liberal concept, actually, to say my body, my choice, individual sovereignty. The government doesn't have a right to force something into my body. But they were called right wing. They were called in a stunning reversal and a bit of projection. Justin Trudeau called them authoritarian. So all of these same insults are being lobbed against farmers worldwide. They're being called right wing in order to mock it. Whenever my husband and I see a farmer on a tractor here in Texas, we're like, look at that right wing bigot on his tractor. Because they're all being called that. It's ridiculous. It's evil what they're doing. Rosmick says, Washington State governor called us miscreants to the UN. Wow, I didn't know that. Yeah, sounds about right, though. Not surprising. Okay, so where should I even start? Let's start with leading up to the protest. So leading up to the protest, there was news that the farmers were going to be, turning out to say no to this. And here, let's start with some of the stuff that came out ahead of time. So some of you may have seen this Guardian headline, and this is just incredible. Incredible. And I think it's really illustrative of what they are. And it points to, events in history. They say that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And we are watching history rhyme. These people, these leftists, are communists. They're Marxists and they're communists. They call themselves different things. They might call themselves liberal. They might call themselves progressive. They might call themselves labor, depending on what country you're in. But if they believe in the government, like government supremacy, that the government has the right to come in and seize your assets, an ever increasing amount of your assets, these are communists. And we know that their stated goals, you can go right to the World Economic Forum and look at their stated goals for the year 2030. They say you will own nothing and you will be happy. They have whole ad campaigns based around it. I'll show you some of that too. If you're on the left, you may not have seen them. This is all in the Great Reset plans that they have for 2030. They want to abolish private property. They're communists. Many who call themselves Democrats in the US are communists. Kamala is a communist. Why would they want to abolish private property? Private property is freedom. Being able to keep the fruits of your labor is freedom. If you take that away, you rob people of all meaning and purpose. Why work and toil towards anything? Why aim towards anything? If you're just a slave to the government, they own everything and you're just a sharecropper. You're just a renter. You're just paying them for them to pay you back a little piece of it each month on the dole, whatever they decide. Okay, so this is written by some guy named Will Hutton. Now, you guys in the UK may be familiar with him. I'm not, but I do know that he's a giant asshole from reading this. Do you know that he is a communist piece of crap? This infuriated me so much to see this. Look at the headline. Farmers have hoarded land for far too long. They make no bones about. Here's the thing. Just like leftists do, they say this isn't happening. Then they get to the stage where they say, well, it is happening, but it's a good thing. A lot of the media right now is pretending like this isn't happening. They're like, oh, it's not really about punishing farmers. It's not really about seizing farmland. It's for the greater good. We're just trying to collect some taxes. It's for the greater good. They're trying to pretend like it's not happening. Well, Will Hutton has just sped right past that. He's one of the guys who's now saying it is happening and it's a good thing. Why? Because those farmers are hoarding land. They're hoarding land. Private property is bad. It's hoarding. How dare you have a home with a door on it that you can lock and a little place to call your own, the results of your labor. How dare you, right? So the headline, farmers have hoarded land for too long. Make no mistake, the farmers are the enemy here in this headline. Farmers are the enemy. This is a war on farmers. Farmers have hoarded land for too long. Inheritance tax will bring new life to rural Britain, he says. That's the headline. Then he says he makes a promise that's not true. History doesn't bear this out. He says prices and rents will fall under this plan, enabling a younger generation with new ideas to enter the field with their own farm. Doubtful. Maybe they can get a job working on a BlackRock or a government farm. Look at him. Look at the image that the Guardian decided to run. Look at this horrible, wealthy farmer. They put the farmer here in a business pinstripe suit. He's not dressed like a farmer because oops, then you might identify him as part of the working class. No, they want you to hate this guy. He's an elitist billionaire farmer. Look at him in his banking suit with his huge, gated plantation of pigs, piggy banks. They're all piggy banks because he's just a wealthy, evil farmer. Farmers have hoarded too much. Even this graphic, this illustration is propaganda. This is meant to make the casual viewer, along with the headline, the casual viewer, the casual reader who never goes beyond the headline anyway, or who might look at the image. You're supposed to leave that with an impression of a greedy, capitalist, hoarding farmer who's the enemy. Look at him. He's just a banker farmer. Look at all those piggy banks he's farming. He has too much. This is propaganda. And this is just stunning, this piece. Let's read some of it. One of the baleful dimensions of our times is the way that the conversation about what constitutes the good society is framed by the rich and their interests. Okay, so already propaganda out the gate. First sentence. This guy who's writing this, Will Hutton, is pretending like he's not on the side. He's not on the side of the rich and their interests. He's for the people. He's not on the side of the rich and their interests. Of course he is. He's pinning this piece of propaganda for the rich, for the government, for BlackRock, for the corporations, against the people. This is reversal. This is Darvo. This is deny and reverse, victim and offender. This is someone in the media, the corporate press, carrying water for the corporations and for the government, and trying to lie to you and lie to all of us and make us think they're the little guy. They represent the little guy and the common good. They're against the rich and their interests. Who's the rich and their interests here? Oh, the farmers. The farmers? It's just like what Justin Trudeau did to the truckers, trying to paint them the reversal, trying to paint them as the authoritarians when they were protesting the very definition of authoritarianism, his government dictating what they had to put in their bodies in order to work, in order to drive into the country and work. So right out the gate, first sentence, propaganda, pretending like he's on the side of the people. No, this is a corporate shill on the side of the rich and their interests. He continues, a conception of the common good withers. Now, first of all, I've said this before. Make note of it. If you're new here, if you've been here a couple times, anytime you see the common good or the public good, be very, very wary. This is a phrase that communists love to use to justify authoritarianism and tyranny, to justify oppression. They say it's for the greater good, the common good, the public good. Sacrifice your individual rights for the common good. He's using that. That's a red flag right there. If you see that, we talk about the language of the woke. We talk about understanding their lexicon, their dictionary, the words that they use. This is the common good. This is one of their phrases. This is a Marxist and communist, like ding, ding, ding. You should be paying attention immediately. A conception of the common good withers, he says. Instead, it is replaced by the existential importance of private wealth, private interests, and private ownership to societal health. Look what he's demonizing here. It's right out in the open. They hate private property. They hate freedom. Private property is freedom. They don't want us to own anything. Not our houses, not our land. If you're a farmer, not your farm. They don't want you to even own cars. In this vision that they have for 2030, they're like, you're not even going to own your car. Look at what they've been doing in the US. They're trying to make it so expensive to drive your own personal vehicle. Under Biden, Pete Buttigieg said, okay, it's not enough that you pay tax on your private vehicle when you buy it. It's not enough that you are taxed on the gasoline. We're also going to tax you per mile that you drive your private vehicle. Why? Because they want to get us all into public transportation. No freedom. So he's demonizing here. He's lifting up common good, right? This is what they do. And he's demonizing private wealth, private interests, and private ownership, private property. That's what he's talking about, private property. The ability to keep the fruits of your labor without some tyrannical power coming in and seizing it from you and redistributing it and taking a hefty cut off the top for themselves, like the mob. That's what the government is here, the mob. Except they're not as trustworthy as the mob. If you pay them off, there's no guarantee they'll come and help you when you need it. Look at FEMA. Look at North Carolina. Did they show up? Okay, so he continues. Nowhere is this more exposed than in the debate over taxation, and in particular, the taxation of inherited wealth, as the debate over the past fortnight has dramatized. 500,000 people die every year. Under the reforms to inheritance tax relief on agricultural land proposed in the budget, about 500 individuals who would inherit land worth more than 2 million. I'm sorry, let me correct myself. I said earlier 1 million. I think it's 2 million. but I'm not sure because he lies in here. I'm going to check it with some of the other things I have pulled up just to make sure I got that right. Here's one thing he's lying about. Look at this. He says, under the reforms to inheritance tax relief on agricultural land proposed in the budget, about 500 individuals who inherit land worth more than £2 million, 3 million if they're married to the deceased, will join the rest of society and have inheritance tax levied on their bequest, albeit at half the rate, with an enlarged exemption and 10 years to pay it. 10 years to pay it. By then, your child who inherited the family farm, they might have passed away, and you have double the debt now. Don't worry, you've got 10 years to pay it, debt upon debt upon debt. Concessions not made to the rest of us, he says. These are farmers. They produce your food, Will Hutton. If you think the government or BlackRock is going to do a better job of that, you haven't learned anything from history. He says, how fortunate and privileged are they? He calls the farmers fortunate and privileged. There's that Marxist woke word, privileged. Now, here's where I said he's lying. What he's doing is telling a partial truth to obscure a greater truth. So the numbers are actually, it's about 70,000 farmers affected. 70,000 farmers affected who have farms that are over this threshold, right? Farms that are over this 2 million pound threshold. He says only 500. Only 500. Where does he get that? Do you notice he doesn't clarify here what he means? He leaves out and he omits a fact. This is lying by omission. Do you know what he's leaving out here? Do you know how he got that number? That's how many they estimate will die per year. 500 of those 70,000 farmers will die per year. So he says it's only 500 farmers affected per year. Per year. Only 500 family farms affected per year. That's how many will die per year. It's 70,000 farms affected. 70,000 farmers who are now having to worry about this. This guy's he's a pig. He's a pig. He's a corporate shill. He shills on behalf of corporations like BlackRock. He shills on behalf of the government over the people, and he's trying to present himself as some man of the people. I thought this article was utterly disgusting, but also very, very illustrative of what they're all about. Demonizing private property, demonizing farmers, trying to paint them as, these capitalist fat cats that we should hate. They feed us. They feed us. I'm doing a shirt. So I have a friend. My friend Greg is helping me get my web store off the ground. I'm so excited because I haven't done one for a while. Again, there's some people who say anybody who does an internet show, you're grifting. If I'm grifting, I'm doing it wrong. I even forgot to say at the beginning, if you like the show, please hit like and subscribe, and you can also become a member. But I've been meaning to for a long time, and I'm like, oh, that's not as important to have stuff to sell. But I'm excited. I'm excited to have stuff to sell now because I have some good ideas that I think are funny and shirts I would wear. And one of them is, I think, really cool. And it's just going to say, thank a farmer. Thank a farmer. I have a shirt from my aunt from the 80s. And I still have this. I still wear it. It says, if you can read this, thank a teacher, because my aunt was a teacher. And it's going to be like that. Thank a farmer. These guys feed us. Do you understand? Do you understand? It's like throughout history, we forget this over and over. We forget over and over. And it's like, oh, we can do a better job than the farmers. You know who can do a better job? BlackRock. You know who can do a better job? The government. We should collectivize the farms. Yeah, that's a good idea. Here, let me put this up. I tried to make a meme to get all of this onto one meme that maybe people would want to share to try and illustrate what's happening, because it's made me so angry how he's characterizing the farmers. And so I had his quote. I said, "Why are thousands of farmers in the UK protesting? Because communism kills and history rhymes." So I did this meme. It says "War on Farmers," and it's got Will Hutton's quote here. "Farmers have hoarded land for too long. Inheritance tax will bring new life to rural Britain." Okay, look, compare it to this quote from Lenin. "We all know who that internal enemy is. It is the capitalists, the landowners, the kulaks, and their offspring. Bloodsuckers, vampires, plunderers of the people. Ruthless war on the kulaks. Death to them," Lenin says. Kulaks being farmers. Pretty similar energy, right? Same energy. Who's the enemy? Will Hutton's illustration in The Guardian even had the farmer looking like some bloodthirsty, blood-sucking capitalist, a vampire, a plunderer of the people. Lenin came right out and said, "Ruthless war on the farmers. Death to them." Will Hutton's just not at that stage yet. Thomas is true. It's true, Thomas. Thomas says, "Keri, your ability to meme hasn't caught up with your political change. That's too many words for a meme." I know, and that was the abbreviated version. I never claimed to be a good memer. I just try. I'm a remedial memer. It's very true. How do you get all of that onto a meme? The other problem, Thomas, was I was like, well, a lot of leftists who are looking at this don't even know what kulaks are. Not to explain that, I had a version with a definition on there. They're farmers. They don't know what the Holodomor was. They don't know. Here, let's bring this up. I like to go to Wikipedia as a source when I'm trying to reach people on the left because they like and trust Wikipedia. Wikipedia is incredibly biased. We know this. It has a leftist bias. They have all these terms of service now where they will outright delete your sources if they're from conservative publications. They'll say that's not an authoritative source and they'll take it down. It's just like the corporate media. It's propaganda with the stuff they allow up versus what they remove. But I like to go there when I'm talking to people on the left because they don't view it as biased and they think they view it like NPR, which is also incredibly biased. And it's one of the sources they will read. The leftist cult I was in, the social justice, the woke cult, which is a Marxist cult, they teach the people in the cult, they indoctrinate them, they program them not to immediately reject anything that comes from an unapproved cult source. If it's not approved by the cult, no. And so they teach them to commit what's called genetic fallacy, where if they see you, like say you give a source that's from Fox News or Daily Wire or whatever, they'll immediately say, "I'm not reading that." They won't even see what's in it. They won't even trust themselves to be adults to be able to parse opinion from fact in the piece and come to their own conclusions. They just will not read it. So I like to go to Wikipedia for that reason. So here, for anyone on the left who you don't know who the kulaks are, that's okay. When I was in the leftist cult, I didn't either. Guess what? I went to two really great schools. I went to a science and math high school. I went to Duke University, and I hardly learned anything about communism. Hardly anything. So this is a pretty important part of history that you should learn about if you're in the woke cult or if you're leaving it slowly or if you're on the fence and, let's see what Wikipedia has to say. What's a kulak? Look at this. This is where the government's coming in and taking grains from them. By the way, they called them wealthy peasants. Wealthy peasants. Just like this guy Will Hutton did in the Guardian piece. Oh, the wealthy, privileged farmer. He called them privileged. They have to paint them as some enemy of the people. They have to paint the farmers as the enemy of the people. Oh, what's their crime? They own land. They're landowners. They have farms. Okay, kulak was the term which was used to describe peasants who owned over 8 acres of land toward the end of the Russian Empire. In the early Soviet Union, particularly in Soviet Russia, kulak became a vague reference to property ownership among peasants. Among the peasants, okay? It's not the government elite, it's not the corporations, it's the peasants, but they're peasants who have land. How dare they? I'm gonna scroll down to what happened. During the Russian Revolution, kulak was used to chastise peasants who withheld grain from the Bolsheviks. According to Marxist-Leninist political theories in the early 20th century, the kulaks were considered class enemies of the poorer peasants. So this is what they do. They try and get the people at the bottom, all of us at the bottom, to war against each other. They want us to war against the farmers and view the farmers as the enemy. So we are not collectively, let's use their words. So we are not collectively looking at them, the elite, the WEF, the World Economic Forum, the global elite, the corporations, the government, so that we're not looking at them and going, wait a minute. Are they not our class enemies? If we have a class enemy, is it not those guys? No. It's the farmer that's your class enemy. They were considered class enemies of the poorer peasants. Vladimir Lenin described them as bloodsuckers, vampires, plunderers of the people, and profiteers who fattened themselves during famines, declaring revolution against them. During the first 5-year plan, Stalin's all-out campaign to take land ownership and organization away from the peasantry, all the peasantry, by the way, meant that, according to historian Robert Conquest, peasants with a couple of cows or 5 or 6 acres more than their neighbors were labeled kulaks. So any peasant who had a couple of cows or 5 or 6 acres more than the neighbors labeled a kulak. I don't know about some of you guys. My grandpa had a small family farm. He wasn't some big farmer. He wasn't feeding a country like these farmers in the UK who are protesting. He didn't have some huge farm. He had a small family farm. He had a couple of cows. At most, I remember he had 4 or 5 cows. So my grandfather would have been considered an enemy, a kulak, fattening himself during famines. My papa, who had a small family farm, he would have been in this group of people. In 1929, Soviet officials officially classified kulaks according to subjective criteria, such as the use of hired labor. If you ever hired someone to help you on your family farm, you're also in this. You're an enemy of the people now. Under dekulakization, government officials seized farms, and killed many kulaks, deported others to labor camps, put them in labor camps, and drove many others to migrate to the cities, following the loss of their property to the collectives. Do you understand? They came in, they seized the farms. This is, those of you, maybe you're watching from South Africa, this will be very familiar to you too. They're like, turn the poorer peasants against the farmers and say, don't you need revolution? Haven't we made things bad enough for you yet that you're crying out for revolution? Here's your class enemy. We need to kill these people, take their land, and collectivize it. How's that ever worked out? How did it work out in South Africa? How's it working out? How did it work out with the kulaks? Well, spoiler alert, the death of millions, the famine, the starvation of millions and millions of people. People were eating each other. They had to put up posters, like kind of like wash your hands after you use the bathroom at work posters, but that said, don't eat your kids. I'm not joking. I know it sounds dark and like that this is stuff that they had to do because people were starving so bad after they took the farms away from the people who had worked those farms for generations and understood how to farm, who had an invested interest in continuing their family's legacy and being successful. They took it away from it and it's all the people's now. The government owns it. This is like Orwell's Animal Farm. These are some of these bloodthirsty look at these pictures. Bloodthirsty capitalist landowning farmers. I wanted to get to this other part. Let me see where it's at. Okay. This is that part about how the definition of kulak was expanded to include peasants who owned livestock. However, a middle peasant who did not hire laborers and was little engaged in trade might still, if he had a large family, still hold 3 cows and 2 horses, and therefore he would also be considered a kulak. There were other measures that indicated the kulaks as not being especially prosperous. Both peasants and the Soviet officials were uncertain as to who constituted a kulak. It was a very vague term. They often used the term to label anyone who had more property than was considered normal, according to subjective criteria, and personal rivalries also played a part in the classification of people as enemies. Officials arbitrarily applied the definition and abused their power. The land of the landlords had been spontaneously seized by the peasantry. A small class of richer peasants with around 50 to 80 acres had been expropriated by the Bolsheviks. Thereafter, a Marxist conception of class struggle led to an almost totally imaginary class categorization being inflicted in the villages, where peasants with a couple of cows or 5 or 6 acres more than their neighbors were now being labeled as kulaks, and a class war against them was being declared. In the summer of 1918, Moscow sent armed detachments to the villages and ordered them to seize grain. Peasants who resisted the seizures were killed by the government. Killed. By the way, keep in mind, in the back of your mind, these governments also want to disarm us. If you're on the left, like, hold these two ideas together. They don't want us to own private property. They want to get us eventually to a place where we can't own private property. And they also don't want us to have guns and the ability to defend ourselves. What could possibly go wrong? The communists declared war on the rural population for 2 purposes: to forcibly extract food for growing industry, called the First 5-Year Plan, in cities, to extract food for the cities and the Red Army, and insulate their authority into the countryside, which remained largely unaffected by the Bolshevik coup. A large-scale revolt ensued, and it was during this period in August of 1918 that Vladimir Lenin sent a directive known as Lenin's hanging order. Hang without fail, so the people see no fewer than 100 known kulaks, rich men, bloodsuckers. Do it in such a way that for hundreds of kilometers around, the people will see, tremble, know, and shout. They are strangling and will strangle to death the bloodsucker farmers. Farmers. Maverick Buckley says, "Thank you so much for covering this. My uncle is a small farm owner. He's 87 and works 7 days a week, 12 to 16 hours a day. He's had to remortgage twice and is heavily in debt." I'm so sorry, and I'm not surprised. I mean, this in some form or fashion is happening in every Western country. It's just the hot spot right now is the UK. It was the Netherlands. It'll be the Netherlands again. It'll be the US. Elsa Barrett. I'm just going to thank a couple people, and then I'm going to get to some of these other things I've pulled up. Elsa Barrett, who's been a member for 10 months. Thank you, Elsa. It says, "I grew up on a beef farm. It's been in my family since the 1840s. If Trudeau tried this in Canada, my dad would still vote for him. Oh, that's how deep the brainwashing is, right? Oh, that's such a yes, but I know that. I know people like that. You know, when they were rounding people up and putting them in the gulags, there were people who, even when they had been everything they owned was stripped from them and they were thrown into the prison camp, they still would defend the government that did it to them. That's how deep the brainwashing was. That's how deep the fear is. Randy Wallen for $5. Thank you, Randy. Says follow Trinity Vandenaker. Trinity Vandenaker, and also the Beef Initiative to understand what is happening in our farms and farmers in the USA. Thank you for those tips. Trinity Vandenaker and Beef Initiative. Okay, I got it. Thank you, Randy. I appreciate you. I don't think I followed them, so I will. Also, Randy for $10. Thank you, Randy. Says government and industry wants serfdom. Yes. In the US, processing is controlled by 4 companies that use their power to destroy the small farms. USDA forcing regulations on small processors to put them out of business. Absolutely. This is what ESG scores are for, too. It's only the large corporations that can afford to implement all of these ridiculous ESG requirements so they can get their score up, their DEI initiatives, their climate change initiatives. But it provides an effective barrier to keep small competitors like Will Hutton was talking about, new blood in the industry, to keep them from rising. Absolutely, Randy. And KB for $4.99. Thank you, KB. KB says, hello, Keri. I worry that they're messing with our food supply and trying to legally steal farmland or develop meat. Quite evil. Or, trying to legally steal farmland and development. Quite evil. I agree. It's weird. You know, Bill Gates is one of these you can think of as a corporate entity. I do. I know he's a wealthy individual, but corporate entity at this point who's buying up all this farmland. He's also the one who's experimenting and putting out all this fake meat. I mean, as my friend Libby Emmons says, it's like they want you to eat crickets. Let's switch gears for a second and let's look at some of the stuff that happened in the UK. So this is Logan Lansing saying, what if I told you a bunch of communists are trying to starve you to death? It's like the Matrix, right? What if I told you? Here's your red pill moment for some people. You know, for some people, the red pill moment was Trump winning in 2016. For some people, it was the BLM riots. For some people, it was COVID policies. I know a lot of people that was their red pill moment. This might be your red pill moment. And by red pill, I mean it in the broadest sense. I just mean a waking up. I don't mean becoming a Republican or becoming any. I just mean waking up. I just mean God giving you eyes to see and ears to hear. This might be the waking up moment for a lot of people. The farm issue. What if I told you a bunch of communists are trying to starve you to death? They are. The British Patriot had a post here. This is before the protests happened. He says breaking over 500,000 patriots and more than 5,000 tractors set to take over central London tomorrow. The communists have no idea what's about to hit them. I love that. And then here's some of the footage from the protest shared by Andy No, and my friend Libby Emmons says, maybe the British government just wants people to eat crickets. Yeah. And Bill Gates making his fake cricket meat or whatever he's putting into it, his synthetic meat. Let's watch this little clip. Andy No says, London, at the farmers' protests against the incoming inheritance tax on farms, children ride mock tractors. In 2026, inherited agricultural assets worth more than £1 million will be taxed at 20%. Now, all the protesters were not children. I just thought that's an adorable little clip of all the kids on their tiny tractors. But let's watch this. So those of you in the UK may be familiar with Jeremy Clarkson. I wasn't that familiar. I mean, he looked familiar to me, but I had to look up who he is. He is a farmer himself and a journalist and an entertainer. I guess he's like a TV personality. And let me see, where is this one? Here we go. He's just amazing at the protest. Do you guys know who he is in the States? I didn't. But I like I said, he seems so familiar to me. Here he is. This guy's just great. So someone shared this and says, well, they're telling you what is said in this here. I'll just play it.
So why are you here, Mr. Clarkson?
Well, because I'm here to support farmers.
Right. Are you angry?
It's difficult to be angry on somebody else's behalf. That's like being, yes, no, I'm not angry on someone else's behalf.
Right. So it's not about you. It's not about your farm and the fact that you bought a farm to avoid inheritance tax.
Classic BBC there.
Did you hear that? She said, this isn't just about you. And then she, look at that insult. She goes, and the fact that you bought a farm to avoid inheritance tax. What a freaking see you next Tuesday is that? What kind of a question? That's what's known as a loaded question. That's where you're putting an assumption or an accusation in the question itself as if it is a fact. She's assuming his motives. He's a bad person. And she's attacking his character in the question itself. You bought a farm to avoid inheritance tax. I love the way he claps back at her. Oh, I hate that I just used that expression. I'm never going to say that again. It's such a millennial expression. Okay. Here, I love the way he responds to her.
Yes, no, I'm not angry on someone else's behalf.
Right. So it's not about you. It's not about your farm and the fact that you bought a farm to avoid inheritance tax.
Classic BBC there. Classic. Oh yeah. It's not the fact that I bought a farm to avoid inheritance tax. The fact.
You told the Sunday Times in 2021 that's why you bought it.
People.
Sorry?
BBC. Okay, let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
I wanted a shoot. Okay? That's even worse to the BBC. I wanted a shoot, which comes with the benefit of not having to pay inheritance tax. Now I do. But people like me will simply put it in a trust. And so long as I live for 7 years, that's fine. And as my daughter said, you will live for 7 years. You might be in a deep freeze at the end of it, but you will live for 7 years. But it's incredibly time consuming to have to do that. And why should all these people have to do that? Why should they?
So one of the reasons Rachel Reeves says she brought this in is to...
Oh, my husband has a clarification. And like he just proved there, he says, hey, Anthony, he says, Clarkson openly admits he bought a farm to avoid taxes, but defends the farmers nevertheless. I think what he's saying, though, is also there's a lot more reasons than that he's also enjoying, working the farm. I don't think it's like, I'm just buying this and I'm not going to do it just to avoid the tax. But your point is taken. Maybe it wasn't as malicious as I first said that she asked the question that way. Let's back up a little.
Should all these people have to do that? Why should they?
So one of the reasons Rachel Reeves says she brought this in is to stop wealthy people using it as a way.
No, that was the only reason she did.
Well, no, the other reason was to raise money for public services. Well, have you seen?
Are you listening to this?
Have you tried to get a GP appointment lately?
Yes, right. I just recently had a heart attack.
Okay, so you know it's tough.
Yes.
So where should they get the money from if it's not from farmers?
From farmers. You hear that, everyone?
With
BBC
assets.
thinks you should be paying for everything.
Clarkson,
do you know how many people pay inheritance tax in this country?
It's 4% of estates.
What?
4% of estates. 4%
pay inheritance tax. 96% of the population of the UK does not pay inheritance tax.
Sure.
After this becomes law, 96% of farmers will.
Where have you got that figure from?
Who here, can I just ask, who here is going to be unaffected by these changes? No one.
Right. Where have you got
I
the
know.
96% figure
Well,
from?
you've got 96%. Well, the same place that Rachel Reeves does, from the middle of her head,
Right.
from the Sixth Form Debating Society that she was no doubt a member of,
Okay.
which
So
formed her opinions and yours.
I am not expressing opinions.
Are you
I'm
sure?
literally asking you questions.
No, you did express an opinion. You did express an opinion. As if he just bought a farm to avoid taxes. You express the opinion in the question, and also the opinion that these farmers somehow owe it to the collective good, to the Marxist communist collective good, to have their family farms, 20% of their family farms, stolen from them every time a generation passes away, until they have nothing. Like, that's your opinion, is that that's a good thing, and that they where else is the government going to get the money, you said? Maybe cut the size of the government, huh? Think about that. Think about who the real bloodsuckers and vampires are. The barnacles on the bottom of society. Little Ragamuffin, great point. Little Ragamuffin says avoiding taxes is not illegal. It's what smart people do. That's actually true. And Real Raven, because he wanted to shoot a show there. Yes. Anthony, my husband, says, I'm not defending the reporter, by the way. He uses it to say that not all farmers are wealthy and have means like he does. Yeah, most of these farms are cash poor. They're already talking about how they're going to have to sell off assets to even pay this tax. Look at this, Real Raven. Great point. That reporter is paid by the BBC from forced license fees. Yes, forced license fees. The people pay for her. For the common good, though. It's for the common good that she's getting a paycheck to do this.
Not expressing opinions. I'm
Yes.
literally asking you questions. You know that, Mr. Clarkson.
Right.
So, what is your message to this government?
Please back down, please.
And get the money from where?
Well, they've got 40 billion. I'll tell you where you get the. Walk into any of the offices around here. If you don't understand what somebody's job is, fire them.
And how
The civil
far-
service.
What a novel idea. She's like, and get the money where? Where should the government get the money they want? Well, from themselves. Maybe cut some of the jobs. He's like, walk into any of these government offices. If you don't understand what they do, fire them. What a novel idea. I heard a stat once. I hope I have it right. It's been a while, but I think it was in the textbook that I read. But the size of our federal government in the US, for example, is so large. Our government is so large and unwieldy and expensive, and it just keeps growing, that if the number of people who worked in some capacity for the federal government was a country, it would be the 5th largest country in the world. Is that true? I read that somewhere. Why not fire? Why not do what Donald Trump says he's going to do? And man, I'm knocking on wood that he does it. I don't put my faith in any politician and what they promise, but man, he says that he's going to cut the size of government. He says that that's what he's assigning Vivek and Elon to do. Well, then I want to see it done. Where are we going to get the money? Physician, heal thyself. I love that the assumption of these communists is like, the government wants more money. And the best place to get it is from farmers who work their butts off for what they own. And by the way, provide a great service that people need, feeding the people. But the best place for us to get that money is by running these farmers into the ground so they cannot continue to operate family farms or pass them down anymore. And then what happens? We know what happens to collectivized farms. when you punish the people who are good at their job, we know what happens. You give the job to people who are unqualified, don't know what they're doing, didn't work their way, up, didn't work to be there. People like Kamala Harris.
And how
The civil
far-
service is too top. You know that. I must get on.
Okay. Savrix, thank you for the super chat for 1999. Savrix says, I've been in the car in stop and go traffic for 40 minutes, 11 miles to go. LOL. Good to see you, Keri. Man, that sucks. It sounds like you might need to use a bicycle there, wherever you could. Yeah, it's at that point, right? In Los Angeles, it would be like that sometimes, where you would be 10 miles away from something and it would take you an hour to get there. It's sort of like, I guess I'll just ride a bicycle. Depending on what city you're in. Rodney, hey there, Kamala worked her ass off. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. This is some interesting stuff here. Where should we go from here? Let's go. Actually, before we go there, before we go to the BlackRock stuff, let's look at some of the coverage. Now, we know how Will Hutton lied to us and said it only affects 500 people. And what he was leaving out is 500 people per year, farmers per year who we estimate will die. It affects 70,000 farmers. That's the estimate. Well, here, we've got a couple things. Now, I noticed, sorry, I'm trying to find the right one. I think this is the one. Let's do this one. Okay, this is from 3 days ago. Yeah, we'll do this one first. This is from 3 days ago on the BBC. Thousands of farmers protest against inheritance tax changes. Thousands of people have protested in London over changes to inheritance tax for farmers announced in the budget. Among those marching in Whitehall was TV presenter Jeremy Clarkson, who said it's the end for farmers as he called for the government to change its mind. The Prime Minister said he understood farmers' concerns and, quote, wants to support them, but added that the vast majority would be unaffected. Really? From April 2026, inherited agricultural assets worth more than 1 million were previously which were previously exempt will be liable. So he lied again. I was right. It's 1 million pounds. According to this BBC article, that's the threshold. If your farmer's worth more than 1 million pounds, not 2 million, 1 million. Will Hutton in The Guardian was saying 2 million. This BBC article saying 1 million. Worth more than 1 million, which were previously exempt, will be liable to the tax at 20%, half the usual inheritance tax rate. Other allowances could mean a couple who are married or in a civil partnership could pass on a farm worth as much as 3 million. I love this sign here, these protesters. No farmers, no food, no future. Hashtag back British farming. Hashtag no family farm tax. I'll continue in this BBC piece. However, many farmers argue that while they are asset rich, for example, in terms of their land and livestock, they are cash poor, and the changes would mean that they would have to sell to be able to pay the tax. Ahead of the protest, around 1,800 National Farmers Union members met near Parliament as part of a mass lobby of MPs. The group's president, Tom Bradshaw, gave an impassioned speech describing the tax changes as destructive, a, quote, stab in the back for farmers, wrong and unacceptable. He told protesters the changes were, quote, the straw that broke the camel's back. Yeah. Later, speaking to Sky News, he said that Labor had, quote, destroyed a contract between farming and the government dating back to World War II. Yes, that's what they're doing. These farms were exempt for a reason from an inheritance tax because they feed the people. We'd love to pay more tax, Mr. Bradshaw added. If we get proper margins from food production and we end up swelling the treasury coffers, then bring it on. But at the moment, the supply chain doesn't give us those returns that enables us to save the money to pay the inheritance tax that this government now wants to take. He added that Environment Secretary Steve Reed said that when he was in opposition, that labor would not change agricultural property relief. Since 2019, pig farming costs have risen by 54%. That's just 5 years, by 54% in 5 years. Cattle farming by 44% and cereal by 43% as fuel, food, and fertilizer prices increase at a rate far outstripping the increases that farmers can charge on what they produce. Subsidies that farmers get have also been declining since Brexit. Government research suggests that an average farm last year made a profit of about £45,000. Are you kidding me? Is that the right number? An average farm made a profit of £45,300. That's it? They're doing this back-breaking work, and those are the fruits of their labor, and the government wants to take even more. 45,000. You can be a government paper pusher and make double that. And then it says, although that figure may be overstated as it's based on a survey that excluded farms that bring in the least money. That excludes the ones that bring in the least money? Oh my gosh. And this is government. These are government estimates. The government estimates that the average farm last year made a profit of £45,000. These are the fat cats that Will Hutton is complaining about? Am I reading that number wrong? No? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah, Cheeky Mare. Hey, Cheeky Mare. She says, my brother works for the state and he makes 2.5 times that salary. Yes, of course. These are the Will Hutton and his guardian piece. They're hoarding land. He had them painted as, a rich bankster looking capitalist millionaire. That's what he had them looking like. And then with piggy bank pigs on their farm, and they're making on average $45,000, 45,000 pounds, in profits a year, excluding the ones that bring in the least money. Are you kidding me? And they are saying we need to tax these people 20% when one generation dies and they pass it down to the next. Are you kidding me? Okay. The number of the UK's 210,000 farms that could be affected by the inheritance tax change is also disputed. The government says it will affect the wealthiest 500 estates each year. Each year. Do you see how they do the shell game here and they lie to you? 500 wealthiest estates each year, but the NFU and the County Land and Business Association, the CLA, have estimated up to 70,000 farms worth more than £1 million could be affected. By the way, that effer Will Hutton lied. It's 1 million is the threshold, not 2 million. 1 million. Okay, so here, look at this paragraph. The government says it will affect the wealthiest 500 estates each year. Yes. But then they make it sound like this is contradictory and you have to pick one of these. You don't. You don't. The NFU and the County Land and Business Association have estimated up to 70,000 farms worth more than £1 million. Yes, there are 70,000 farms worth more than £1 million, and that comes out to about 500 farms a year where the farmer dies. That's how they're doing this shell game, where they want the casual reader who doesn't understand math to look at this and go, well, it's only 500 farmers affected. No, that's per year. That's how many die per year. Between 2021 and 2022, 117 farms with a value of more than 2.5 million pounds were inherited. Reid told the Commons Rural Affairs Committee on Tuesday that many farmers protesting over the tax changes were wrong about the policy, and he rejected claims the government had underestimated how many people would be affected. Quote, many of them probably happily are wrong because there are things that they can do to plan their tax affairs, as most businesses or asset owners would do to limit their liability, he said. The numbers I've heard bandied around are enormous and very, very frightening if people were to believe them. He acknowledged the changes would be, quote, unsettling, though. They might be just a little unsettling. And he said he was listening. Him listening to the concerns. I'm listening to your concerns, but insisted that most farmers would not face a hike. I love some of these signs. We just want to feed you. When I grew up, I wanted to be a farmer, says this little girl. Among those attending Tuesday's events was Gloucestershire livestock farmer David Barton, who estimates that his business, which has been in the family since 1913, is worth around 5 million pounds in assets, but says it doesn't make much money year on year. Mr. Barton is worried the proposed changes to inheritance tax could see his son facing a 800,000 pound bill, and said the budget has just ripped the heart out of us. Yeah, if you're a farmer, family farm, and if you sell, right, your farm, all the assets, let's say like this guy estimated, oh, that's a 5 million pound farm. That's what you got there. Now with BlackRock coming in, willing to pay double, it's a 10 million pound farm, right? Once all these private equity firms get into the business, which they're doing, and driving the costs up, driving the price up rather. So anyway, let's say 5 million pounds. Your farm's worth 5 million pounds. But how much are you making per year? Because we just learned that the average is 45,000 pounds. That's what they're making. This is what they mean by cash poor. So if you're making 45,000 pounds a year, but the government says, yes, but if you sell, it's worth 5 million. You could make 5 million pounds. And when you die, your son wouldn't be stuck with an 800,000 pound bill to the government if you sell. What do you think is going to happen? Let's extrapolate out a little bit. If you're on the left and you're still with us this far, just extrapolate out. What's happening here? Is the government, I'll ask you a question, is the government creating an incentive for farmers to sell their farmland to big corporations like BlackRock or to the government to sell it? Is the government trying to force them to sell? Sure seems like it to me. And if you're in that situation like this guy, and you've got a farm that if you sell it, it's worth 5 million pounds. And if you keep it, but you're only making 45,000 pounds a year on it, with all the backbreaking labor and work that you're doing and all the money that goes into running the farm, and you're only making 45,000 pounds in profits, and you know that when you die, your son cannot take over your farm without paying the government 800,000 pounds. You might sell. Look, let's say what he's doing. He's now considering gifting his estate, which he believes would fall outside of inheritance tax if he does not die within 7 years, but he feared he was not in a financial position to stop working. Others at the protest said they would have to sell their farms to pay the tax bills. Yes, that's the point. This is the point. This whole episode, leftists, here's the point. This is a war on farmers. They want the farmers to sell their land. To who? The actual fat cats. The government and the corporations. Who benefits here? It's not the people. Jen, a 7th-generation farmer from Yorkshire who did not give her surname, told the PA news agency, quote, if the budget goes through, then that means I won't be able to take her over my family farm, because between me and my brother, we would have to sell to be able to pay the tax. It's something we've both been passionate about from when we were little kids, ever since we could walk, always been involved. It's our lifestyle. The 24-year-old said they would have to pay approximately 1.2 million pounds to keep their family farm when their dad dies. 1.2 million to the government. We have spoken to our accountants, solicitors, and once something happens to our parents, unless there's some kind of change, unless there's something we can do, then that's not possible for us. They can't keep it. How are you going to come up with that money? This is so infuriating. This makes me angry tears. That's what I want to cry. Angry tears. Jeremy Clarkson, who we heard from. Jeremy Clarkson, who owns Diddley Squat Farm in Oxfordshire, which features the Amazon series Clarkson's Farm, said he thought the change to inheritance tax was a very rushed, last-minute decision. Oh my goodness, I just realized that's why he looks familiar. I have seen him. My friend loves his show, and when I stayed with her one night, she showed me some episodes of Clarkson's Farm, and it was hilarious watching him learn how to be a farmer. Now I want to go back and watch more. I only saw like 1 or 2 episodes. Clarkson's Farm. Okay. Said he thought the change to inheritance tax was a, quote, very rushed, last-minute decision. I think we all make mistakes in life, and I think it's time for them to say, you know what? We've cooked this one up a bit and back down. The rest of this is about the interview of him that we saw. Yes, awesome one. Those who can't create steal. That's what the government's in the business of doing, stealing. Russ Williams says, Clarkson is an institution. His greatest work was punching Piers Morgan in the face once on a Concorde flight. I don't know this lore. I don't know this. I'll have to look this up. Andrew Knapp, thank you for the super chat for $5. Andrew says, remember November, the 5 of November, remember a 5. I-5, no remember, no 5, no November. Never, ever November, no 5. Thank you, Andrew. Very appropriate. Let's move into some of this because I want to make sure I get to cover this before, and we can, yeah, we can move on to this now here. Let's see. This is very interesting. What do you think happens now that we've asked the question, leftists, what do you think happens when the government taxes your family farm into oblivion so that you can't afford to keep the farm when your dad dies and you have to sell? What do you think is going to happen? Okay, we've asked that question. I will say, but my husband in the chat says we are not watching Clarkson Farm until you watch the Borgias or the Sopranos. Look, we'll settle these domestic disputes later. Now, my husband and I have a list, and there are some shows he wants me to watch, and I owe him because he's watched several shows that I wanted to watch. Maybe you have this in your marriage. He's like, no, next you have to watch The Sopranos. Okay, but then we're watching Clarkson Farm. Okay, getting back to the topic. We have asked the question, what do you think happens when the government sets up a disincentive to keep working the family farm that's been in your family for generations, that you know how to do, that's a lifestyle? What happens when the government forces you to sell because you can't afford to keep doing it now that they've levied taxes this large? What do you think happens? Well, this is pretty interesting. My friend James Lindsay says, how about that? Guess who's going to own British farmland after they dekulkalize it? The kulaks, right? And this is a post from Keir Starmer. I don't know if I'm saying it right, and I don't care. He's the UK Prime Minister. And he says here on his own Twitter, he put this out. He's proud of this. And he's got pictures here of himself meeting with them. And he says, I'm determined to deliver growth and create wealth and put more money in people's pockets. Oh, I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are. He continues, this can only be achieved by working in partnership with leading businesses like BlackRock. And he tags them. This can only be achieved by working in partnership. This is the UK Prime Minister, by working in partnership with leading businesses like BlackRock to capitalize on the UK's position as a world-leading hub for investment. Here he is, all chummy with BlackRock. Pretty incredible. When did he put this out? Yesterday. He's pretty proud of it, right? Right while there's putting the squeeze on farmers to have to sell. Who's he talking about working with to create wealth and growth? Put money in people's pockets. Whose pockets? His pockets. His pockets. BlackRock's pockets. Who are they taking that money from? The family farms, the people, the peasants, the kulaks. So that they can reach their 2030 sustainability goals, the World Economic Forum, so that all the stuff they told us in the year 2030, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Well, they got the you will own nothing part probably right. If things continue down this path, you will own nothing. Can't say that we'll be happy about it. They'll be happy. BlackRock. And I thought this was a great summary. This is a great prophecy or prediction. Let's say prediction. Daniel Priestley on X. I'm not that familiar with him. I guess I should follow him so I learn more about him. Okay, Daniel Priestley. He says, watch out, British farmers. This is how Keir Starmer's new best buddies at BlackRock are going to screw you over in 7 steps. It's a good summary. He says, number 1, they will start buying up small plots of agricultural land at double the normal price. They will issue a directive to all of their energy companies simultaneously to aggressively acquire plots for carbon capture. These third parties will start bidding against each other and force the value of agricultural land up. Number 2, initially, farmers won't believe their luck. These city folks are mad. They're crazy. If they want to buy an acre for £50,000, who am I to say no to these fools? That's what you'll hear down at the pub. Does any of this sound familiar, by the way? I know there's a bunch of farmland here in Texas that's going for crazy double the price. To what? To companies like BlackRock. So initially, farmers won't believe their luck. These city folks are crazy. If they want to pay that much, who am I to say no? Number 3, these crazy prices will set record high comparisons for agricultural land. When a farmer dies, their farm will be valued using these new metrics. And the next generation will discover the farm that they thought was worth £3 million is worth £9 million. And they don't have anything close to the money needed to cover the tax. In swoops a BlackRock subsidiary with an agri-debt finance tax relief product to lend them 20% the value of their farm so they can pay the taxes. Let me reread that because I didn't do it justice. In will swoop a BlackRock subsidiary with some kind of finance tax relief package. And BlackRock will be like, well, I'll lend you the 20% of the so-called value of the farm, the value that we drove up, so that you can pay your taxes. Number 5, the debt will come with conditions. A covenant that the farm has to adopt and maintain certain practices. Wonder what those practices could be. It has to use certain BlackRock-owned fertilizers, BlackRock software, BlackRock machinery, and labor solutions that get the family farm ready to interface with a larger conglomerate. Number 6, when the farm cannot afford to make its debt payments, it will be sold at auction. BlackRock subsidiaries are instructed not to buy these farms at auction. They have a special arrangement to buy the unsold farms at a rate that covers the unpaid debt plus outstanding fees and taxes to government. Basically, what the farm was originally worth. A BlackRock subsidiary then will take over the farm. Do you get that? So even then, even if you auction it off at that point where you can't afford the debt to BlackRock anymore, and you think, well, my farm is worth $9 million. That's what these inflated prices now say. That's why I couldn't afford to keep it. That's why I had to take on the debt from BlackRock. Now it's worth $9 million. I'm forced to sell it. I can't pay the debt. So at least I'll sell it. I'll get $9 million. And you put it up for sale. Is there anyone able to buy it? What this guy is predicting is that there won't be any other people in the family farming business who are able to afford it because the prices are so inflated. And you think BlackRock's going to pay that, but they're not. They're going to let your farm go unsold, and then they're going to come in and offer you what it was originally worth. I'll give you $3 million for it. Number 7, a BlackRock subsidiary then takes over the farm, consolidates it with a massive group of farms, and uses illegal immigrant labor to staff the farm, which will be another government program that they institute to deal with the immigration crisis that they created, right? That they created. The government will literally pay for the labor costs as part of this plan. Yeah, doesn't this sound like exactly what is probably going to happen? We have this immigration crisis. What are we going to do? Let's come up with a government program where we put them to work on these farms. It's for the public good and to feed the people, right? Somebody's got to work these farms, these BlackRock farms. The government will literally pay with your tax dollars for the labor costs as part of this plan, making the farms wildly profitable and making small family farms unable to compete. Mark my words, bookmark this post, and watch it play out over the next 5 to 10 years. You might also want to tag a farmer in the comments below. This was an excellent prediction. I unfortunately think that that's a very likely scenario. I want to show you this. You know that Lenin quote I read at the beginning? It was from 1918. You can find the whole thing here. Comrade workers, forward to the last decisive fight. You can read another possible ending for everything that's happening now in history. Not saying this is going to happen, not saying it's guaranteed. I'm saying history tends to rhyme. This is one dark end. We're demonizing farmers, trying to make them a class enemy of other common people could end. And the quotes that I read at the beginning were from this piece. And the whole piece is just him just demonizing, dehumanizing farmers and calling for their deaths, for stealing everything they own and killing them. And demonizing them as capitalists, demonizing them as, bloodsuckers, all the things that Will Hutton is doing, that our corporate press is doing currently about farmers. The Guardian's doing, that the BBC is doing. Look at this part. The kulaks are the most brutal. He's talking about the farmers. The farmers are the most brutal, callous, and savage exploiters who in the history of other countries have time and again restored the power of the landowners, the czars, priests, and capitalists. The kulaks are more numerous than the landowners and capitalists. Nevertheless, they are a minority. Ruthless war on kulaks, death to them, Lenin said. Hatred and contempt for the parties which defend them. This is just, one possible place where stuff like this has ended. If you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat history. I'm sure you've all heard that. Of course, I don't think they don't like us going back and looking at history. They don't like us learning from history. Gina Carano got fired when she tweeted something about the lessons from history and the lessons of fascism. She got fired by Disney. They don't like you opening your eyes. I want to show you here, for those of you on the left who don't know, I was talking about the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum. You really need to, if you're on the left and you're, again, one of these people, maybe you're here because you don't understand what the F is going on. You don't know why Trump won. You don't know why liberals voted for Trump. You don't know why a lot of Latinos voted for Trump. You don't understand. You don't know why the farmers are protesting. You know that you're being told to hate the farmers and that they're these wealthy capitalists, but you don't know what to believe. You just don't understand. Now, a lot of people on the left don't want to understand. A lot of people on the left, they think they know all the answers, and they're never going to watch a program like this. But those of you with questions might have found yourself here. You need to read about history. You need to read about the kulaks, read a lot more about that. Read about the famine and the millions of people who starved to death and died because they took the farms away from the farmers who knew how to work them. They killed millions and millions and millions of people. Look up the Holodomor. You need to read about this. You also need to read about the World Economic Forum. You need to read about the year 2030, their sustainable goals, about the global reset. None of this is conspiracy theory. It's right out in the open. They put it on their websites. They're proud of it. They push it. They do big conferences about it. They get on stages and talk about it. And wanting us all to be eating crickets. And, they talk about us like we are farm animals. That's not hyperbole. I'm not exaggerating. They actually say this. Like, what are we going to do about the problem of too many mouths to feed, too many people, the people who don't matter? That's us. That's all of us. We're not the global elite. We don't go to these meetings. It's all of us, and it's the farmers. And as long as they can keep us all fighting against each other, right left works really great. They can set us on one another really easily by pulling that string. They've been pulling that string for so many decades. It's a Pavlov's bell. They ring that bell right and left, and we just go salivating to our corner of the boxing ring and just start fighting each other. Right and left, get at it, fight. They're trying out this farmer one. We should hate the farmers. Here's something. Let me show you this, since you probably haven't looked into any of this. If you're looking for answers, and seriously, start looking here. They put this out, the World Economic Forum. You probably didn't see it. I don't mean that in a sarcastic, or I'm not trying to demean you. I'm just saying you probably didn't see it, because I know what it was like to be in that echo chamber that you're in. And even though a lot of us in the chat, even, like, we were like, how could you not have seen that? It's a completely different, it's like living in two realities. They probably didn't see this. They put this out. They put out this thing. It was this marketing thing, the World Economic Forum. You'll own nothing in the year 2023. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. This is an article that they wrote for Forbes, and the link at Forbes no longer works. They got so much criticism for it. They took it down, I think. But I found it on Medium. Someone reshared it. They reshared it. The World Economic Forum. They're proud of it. This is from 2016. They put this up. They didn't even put a name on it. They just said from the World Economic Forum. And on the Forbes version of this piece, they did the same thing. They just said World Economic Forum wrote this. Welcome to 2030. I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better. This is real. This isn't satire. This isn't some right-wing conspiracy and trying to make the World Economic Forum look bad. This is what they wrote and they put out. It's not satire. Welcome to 2030. I own nothing. I have no privacy, and life has never been better. Welcome to the year 2030. Welcome to my city, or I should say our city. I don't own anything. I don't own a car. I don't own a house. I don't own any appliances or any clothes. It might seem odd to you. Look, no clothes even. It might seem odd to you, but it makes perfect sense for us in this city. Everything you considered a product has now become a service. We have access to transportation, accommodation, food, and all the things we need in our daily lives. Who provides it? It's the benevolent slave owners, the government, and the corporations, right? Who provides all this that you need? It's the benevolent slave master. One by one, all these things became free. 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 The mouse that looks at a piece of cheese in the trap looks at that cheese and says, "Look at that free cheese sitting in that trap. It's free. It's just sitting right there. I'm going to go take it." One by one, all these things became free, so it ended up not making sense for us to own much. First, communication became digitized and free to everyone. Then, when clean energy became free, things started to move quickly. Transportation dropped dramatically in price. It made no sense for us to own cars anymore because we could call a driverless vehicle or a flying car for longer journeys within minutes. We started transporting ourselves in a much more organized and coordinated way when public transport became easier, quicker, and more convenient than a car. Now I can hardly believe that we accepted congestion and traffic jams, not to mention the air pollution from combustion engines. What were we thinking? Sometimes I use my bike when I go to see some of my friends. I enjoy the exercise and the ride. It kind of gets the soul to come along on the journey. Sounds like AI writing about a soul. Funny how some things never seem to lose their excitement. Walking, biking, cooking, drawing, and growing plants. It makes perfect sense and reminds us of how our culture emerged out of a close relationship with nature. Environmental problems seem far away. In our city, we don't pay any rent because someone else is using our free space whenever we do not need it. Do not need it. My living room is used for business meetings when I am not there. It's our space. Once in a while, I will choose to cook for myself. It is easy. The necessary kitchen equipment is delivered at my door within minutes. Since transportation became free, we stopped having all those things stuffed into our homes. Why keep a pasta maker or a crepe cooker crammed into our cupboards? We can just order them when we need them, like rent them. They come right to our door. This also made the breakthrough of the circular economy easier. When products are turned into services, no one has an interest in things with a short lifespan. Everything is designed for durability, repairability, and recyclability. The materials are flowing more quickly in our economy and can be transformed to new products pretty easily. Environmental problems seem far away since we only use clean energy and clean production methods. The air is clean. The water is clean, and nobody would dare to touch the protected areas of nature because they constitute such value to our well being. In the cities, we have plenty of green space and plants and trees all over. I still do not understand why in the past we filled all free spots in the city with concrete. The death of shopping. Shopping? I can't really remember what that is. For most of us, it has been turned into choosing things to use. Sometimes I find this fun, and sometimes I just want the algorithm to do it for me. It knows my taste better than I do by now. So scary. When AI and robots took over so much of our work, we suddenly had time to eat well, sleep well, and spend time with other people. The concept of rush hour makes no sense anymore since the work that we do can be done at any time. I don't really know if I would call it work anymore. It is more like thinking time, creation time, and development time. They live different kind of lives outside of the city. For a while, everything was turned into entertainment and people did not want to bother themselves with difficult issues. It was only at the last minute that we found out how to use all these new technologies for better purposes than just killing time. My biggest concern is all the people who do not live in our city, those that we lost on the way, those who decided that it became too much, all this technology, those who felt obsolete and useless when robots and AI took over big parts of our jobs, those who got upset with the political system and turned against it. They live different kinds of lives outside of the city. Some have formed little self-supplying communities. Others just stayed in the empty and abandoned houses in small 19th century villages. Once in a while, I get annoyed about the fact that I have no real privacy, nowhere I can go and not be registered. I know that somewhere everything I do, think, and dream of is recorded. I just hope that nobody will use it against me. All in all, it is a good life, much better than the path we were on, where it became so clear that we could not continue with the same model of growth. We had all these terrible things happening: lifestyle diseases, climate change, the refugee crisis, environmental degradation, completely congested cities, water pollution, air pollution, social unrest, and unemployment. We lost way too many people before we realized that we could do things differently. And you can see here at the bottom, this was originally published on the World Economic Forum.org. It was also published in Forbes 2016. None of that's been changed. That is really what it said. Yes, let's see what you guys say. Wokeland defector, OMG, what a complete dystopian nightmare, right? And they even include that part. Like they include the propaganda part, like the promises that are too good to be true. Everything is perfect and great now, and we all love it. It's all we love it. We don't own anything, not even clothes. We don't own our apartment, our bedroom, nothing. It's our room. Somebody uses my bedroom as a business office meeting during the day because I don't need it then. The government's decided I don't need it then. I don't even have a knife. I have to order one from Amazon. It shows up at my door and I just rent it. It's free though. The government pays for it. It's free. They make it sound perfect. Like there's like in this perfect utopia, there's not going to be any, like, how does the government make sure that you get everything at the snap of a finger when you want it? What if everybody wants the kitchen knife at the same time? You know what I mean? Like it's sort of like these socialists that I talk to sometimes, these young guys who are like, I don't trust, they don't trust the government or corporations, but they just want to live on an allowance from the government. What? And you trust the government to decide how much you need? How much you need? So it's not just that they try and paint this too good to be true pie in the sky. It's going to be great and everything you want is just delivered to them. It's all free and, for the common good. The government loves us and cares about us, and this is the best way, right? It's not just that they do that, but they also include some of the very real fears at the end to try. I don't know why exactly, to try and make it seem like they're being fair or something, but at the end it's like, I do worry a little bit that everything I think and see and do and is being recorded. Maybe it'll be used against me. They say that. They put that in there. They put that in there. Yes, Therese, you ordered a steak for dinner. No, sorry, you already had your beef allotment this month. Do you remember that meme that went around of the Alexa refrigerator that like locks your access to food because they saw that you visited Alex Jones's website? Sorry. What did it say? It was something like you committed wrongthink this week. You are not allowed access to your food. Yeah, this is kind of what this sounds like to me. That's crazy. Now, some of these problems are very real. Do you see how they take real things? They never let a problem or a tragedy go to waste, just like with COVID, which is a very real thing. They never let it go to waste to push authoritarianism. They didn't let 9/11 go to waste either to push authoritarianism. And the garbage crisis is real. The consumer price crisis is real. There's an excellent documentary out right now. Oh gosh, what's it called? Hold on. I'm going to recommend this. I just watched this. It's called Buy Now, The Shopping Conspiracy. Buy Now, The Shopping Conspiracy. It's a Netflix doc. I think it's pretty well done. And in it, they just talk about how they have actually this one woman who was an engineer at Amazon.com and from the early days on. And she talks about how they were obviously Obviously, we know this now, but at the time, she was just thought, oh, we're making shopping easier and more convenient. But what they're doing is, for example, she said when they put the, if you buy now, you get 25% off. They will test that in different colors even, or different fonts. Like, we'll put the buy now button in orange, put it in blue, put it in green. We'll test it over millions and millions of people using Amazon, and we'll see which, we'll get the exact data on what induces people to buy right now, which color. Like, they do every little tiny bit of the website is studied like that, because they want to induce the sell as quickly as possible. One click buying. Amazon, Jeff Bezos, they what do you call it? When they put a copyright on that slogan, one click buying. They wanted you remove all the barriers that reduce shopping. Okay. I saw something in a forum this morning from Facebook. It was on Facebook, and it was in a 1980s forum. And it said, I miss this. And it was pictures of the mall at Christmas time in the 80s. Now, that's still consumerism. Yes. There's still problems with it. Yes. Over consumption. But it was very different back then, because you actually had to find time to get in your car, to go to the store, to take the time to browse, to look around, try things on, go to different stores in a mall and figure out you're buying gifts for people. And there's all of this time that it takes that reduces your impulse to just throw down money. And there are actually studies that say when you spend cash, I think I heard this from my husband actually, about the study that says, like, when you spend cash, you spend less because you actually physically see the cash leaving your hand and going to the person, right? But when you're just putting it on a card, or worse yet, when you're just clicking a button, it doesn't feel like you've lost anything. It doesn't have the same psychological feeling, and it's much easier to buy a lot more. And so they have this documentary is amazing, because they're talking with all these industry insiders who've basically become apostates and are now speaking against this. And this one Amazon employee is just like, yeah, we basically were doing everything we can to get you to buy more. And they go into planned obsolescence, which we know Apple does. What I didn't know was that planned obsolescence, this is one interesting thing in the documentary. They trace it back to the light bulb industry, which is crazy. I didn't know that there was this meeting of light bulb manufacturers. Yeah, the Phoebus cartel. And you can look this up. It was an international cartel that controlled the manufacture and sale of incandescent light bulbs in much of Europe and North America between 1925 and 1939. So they had this meeting, all these light bulb companies. This is not fiction. This is real. And they basically met and they said, hey, let's sell more light bulbs. Okay. So let's make the light bulbs less effective. Let's make them die out after 1,000 hours instead of 2,500 hours. And they did, and they all got together and did this, and they killed the lifespan of the light bulb, so that you and I, after 1,000 hours of light, we have to go and buy new bulbs instead of 2,500 hours of light. And then I didn't know it was traced back to that. I know that Apple does plan obsolescence, but that's where they have, basically they build these phones because they want us to buy a new one every 2 years. And they want to talk about climate change and the environment and the pollution. The stats in this documentary are staggering of how many millions of these are thrown away every day, and what toxicity they provide to the environment, but they want to make sure your phone doesn't work after 2 or 3 years. It doesn't work as well. It's built in that you have to replace it. You have to replace your laptop, and they make it proprietary technology, right? So that places like iFixit can't get in there and repair it. They lock it down. They remove the headphone jacks. They remove everything, so nobody can get in there and repair it. I have a MacBook that quit working a couple years ago. Some of you guys may remember. It was only like a year old. It quit working. The hard drive just died. Nobody can fix it. I've been told there's one person in LA who might be able to figure out how to get in there, and it's several $1,000s. So I haven't done it. But you can't just take it like the old days. And that's true with everything. all of the companies, the online shopping are geared towards, and it's working, making us consume millions and millions and millions of pounds of stuff that gets thrown into these landfills and shipped. And you have to watch this documentary. I'm sorry. Even like the whole recycling thing is bullshit. You know what the recycling thing is doing? It's greenwashing. It's so that it's so we feel good about, oh, I put it in the recycling bin. It's good. It still goes to the garbage dump. Only 10% of it gets recycled, if that. And we're creating this crisis and we're pushing it down the road. So all I'm saying is all of this is true. What 2030 says about all of this in terms of some of the crises we're experiencing are true. But the solution is not to surrender all individual sovereignty to the government, to give up all personal freedom and private property, and to enforce communism and Marxism or fascism. The answer is not to surrender personal freedom. They should be. I do think government. I'm not some ANCAP person. I'm not some I think they're just as idealistic and retarded as the Marxists, sorry. I believe in a government. But I think the government has a limited function. I'm very excited about some of the stuff that RFK wants to do, for example, in terms of regulations on our food. I am. I would like to see some regulations on plastics and things. I'm not, they like to paint all of us, anybody who voted for Trump, like, oh, you must not care about the environment, or you must not care about. That's not true. I absolutely care. What I'm skeptical about is anything the government says. I'm skeptical about the way the government uses so-called climate change to gain more control over our lives. But I would like to see protections. I do think we should be protected from things like lead in our water or paint. I do think that it is a version of fraud for companies to build their products such that they are disposable, and that knowing that they're going into landfills within a couple years, even like clothing. Everything. It's not built to last anymore. So what's funny is this WEF, this 2030 propaganda piece about how we're not going to own anything in 2030. It's like, what does it say? We got to the point now our company, now everything is built to last. Well, do that now. Do that now. I don't need communism to do that. We as the consumer need to be demanding that. I was trying to think while watching this documentary, like, what are small things we can do in our individual lives? Like, is there anything? Well, one thing is you could buy older products and you could stop online shopping. This meshes perfectly with one of my interests. I like to buy things just as much as anyone. But I like old things. I think it's pretty fortunate, actually. I'm not saying this makes me better than people who like new things. I'm just saying I feel actually lucky. I would hate it if I wanted to buy new things all the time, because that would be an addiction I would be having to curtail. Mine is I have a tendency to buy too many old things, so that's what I have to curtail. But the beauty of old things is they're made to last. Look at this jacket. This was probably made in the 1940s. Look at this quality. Do you know where you find stuff like this? Little mom and pop thrift stores. This was $10. This beautiful, and it came with matching silk pants in it. And it was built in the 40s. And so there's not some new company out there having to push this out right now. And there's not some crazy price tag on it. And it gets reused. I know it sounds small, but it makes a difference. Like when you buy appliances and stuff. I've started, after watching the doc, I was like, I could do more to buy older appliances. I have a few, but I could have more. Those old vacuum cleaners work the best. And they had bags. I hate these new piece of crap vacuum cleaners that you have to throw out every 2 or 3 years, these plastic monstrosities. And they don't even have bags. You're supposed to, I don't want to have to get covered in dirt and dust and grime when I empty the vacuum cleaner. I want to be able to open it like in the old days and take the vacuum cleaner bag out and throw it away. I'm sorry. But there's less waste if you build the vacuum cleaner to last than if you build these plastic things that get replaced every 2 years. I'm kind of on a rant now about this part. I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but I'm trying to think about, we need to get back to a culture that respects things that last and are built to last, and we need to stop as much as we can. Everybody's different. I get it. So I'm not going to judge the way you do it, you know, and ask you. We can make allowances for give grace to each other. But if we can find ways to get back to reusing, reducing, recycling, all of that in our everyday lives in terms of the stuff that we do and quit contributing to this problem, then it'll maybe mean that the government is less able to say, now we've got this looming crisis and we're going to have to strip away all of your individual rights in order to take care of it. Maybe we could force the companies to change. Cynthia Carter, the new vacuum, Keri. She says the new vacuums are a pet peeve of mine too. Keri, I actually have an early one of those badass things. It's 25 years old and still works like a champ. Yes. I've gone through new vacs repeatedly the last 5 years. Yes, the new vacuum cleaners suck. Yes, great white. Better yet, learn how to fix things so you can keep your possessions working instead of just throwing it out. Yes. And here's what's wrong, though, is that the companies know this. That's why they make it so you can't fix things now. If you get these new cordless AirPod things, the battery is built in such a way, and the battery charger, it's encased in such a way that when it dies, they do this on purpose so that you will throw them away and buy a new pair. If you take it to iFixit, they have the hardest time trying to repair those. They make it virtually impossible on purpose so that you buy a new pair. And in this documentary, Buy It, The Shopping Conspiracy, they interview a guy who worked for Apple who talks about all of it. Like, yes, this is all planned. Yes, you cannot replace the batteries in AirPods. Exactly. And that's on purpose. They are doing this. And then these companies like Apple have the nerve to lecture us about climate change. That's what I think we should be doing. Every single time one of these big corporations lectures us about climate change and the environment, we need to be demanding that they make products that last. Don't ever deign to stand to me, Apple, and tell me about climate change when you make AirPods that can't be fixed. On purpose, you do this, and they go into landfills and your phones and your MacBooks. You do this on purpose, you assholes. And then you want to talk to us about the environment? Fix yourself. I got a little bit sideways on that. But it's related. It's related because this is what they're using to try and justify taking away all of our private property rights, our freedom, our liberties. Climate change is going to be the next big push. This is the next big thing. They tested it out with COVID. They even say, if you go to the World Economic Forum, leftists, they even talk about COVID and what's possible now. They got so excited about COVID and the COVID policies and what they could keep permanently in the future or use again. It's coming with climate change. It's coming. That's next. That's what they're going to use to justify stripping us of all of our rights, all of our property, everything. I want to leave you with a country song, but I think I'll get a strike if I play it. Now, this is on radio. It's like country pop. I'm not a big fan of mainstream country, like radio country music, but I really love this song. I'll make an exception for this song. And my husband and I, Anthony and I, actually got to meet and hear the songwriter. My husband was at a songwriter festival up in Cody, Wyoming this year. And one of the last shows had these 3 songwriters on stage. And oh my goodness, I hope I can credit him. What's his name? The writer was there. Was it Randy Montana? Okay, so Randy Montana is the writer. He's the guy who wrote this song. We got to hear him sing it. But as a lot of these successful songwriters do, they sell the song to someone who's a star. So he sold it to, who's the star? Justin Moore. So if you like radio country, you might already know this song. It's called This Is My Dirt. I love this song. This should be the anthem for the farmers. In this war on farmers, it's this, I make an exception for this radio country song, and I heard the like I said, the songwriter sing it, and I really liked his version, his acoustic version. But here are some of the lyrics. Go and listen. Especially, I would get a delight out of if you don't like country music or if you don't know any country music, go listen to this song if you care about this topic, and tell me in the next show what you think, or leave it below in the comments what you think, because I love introducing people to country music. These are some of the lyrics. This is my dirt. That's the name of the song. He had hard work caked on his overalls, sweat on his neck, chaw in his jaw, when a stranger pulled up and met him outside his barn and said, "Sir, I don't know if you ever would, but I build houses and neighborhoods, and I was wondering if you'd ever want to sell your farm." With his old dog barking and running around, he paused for a second and spit on the ground, then kicked a little gravel, looked down and said, "This is my dirt. These are my fields, where I harvest what I plant. That little pond, I catch bluegill. I built that barn with my 2 hands, where I raise my babies, a piece of me. Nah, this ain't just a piece of land. The money'd be great, but I can't part ways with a life that works. You can't put a greenback dollar on what it's worth. This is my dirt. Great granddaddy bought it for $100 an acre. He just got married when he signed the papers. Him and his brothers framed that old farmhouse. Every fence post here we put in the ground. Ran the barbed wire and we pulled the plow. Every last hay bale, we baled it. Yeah, I'd hate to be the first to sell it. This is my dirt. These are my fields where I harvest what I plant. That little pond, I catch bluegill. I built that barn with my 2 hands, where I raise my babies, a piece of me. Nah, this ain't just a piece of land. The money'd be great, but I can't part ways with a life that works. You can't put a greenback dollar on what it's worth. This is my dirt. This is where 5 generations have prayed for rain. They'll cover me in it when the good Lord calls my name. Oh my gosh. I'm kind of emotional reading it. It makes me emotional. This issue, reading about these farmers who are going to lose their family farms because, the ones we heard from in these articles who are like, when my dad dies, my brother and I have consulted with all the lawyers, all the solicitors. We can't afford to keep the farm. We're going to have to sell. Like, that is heartbreaking. And she's like, this is what I was raised to do. This has been my family for generations. And we're not going to the government is going to take our farm, or BlackRock is going to buy it. Thank you, Jacob. Those are awesome lyrics. I get chills when I hear that song, and it's a radio country song, but I love it. Go listen to it. This is my dirt. I'm telling you, farmers, this is the anthem. This is the anthem for this war. And this war is going to be in all Western countries soon. It's already here. We're just fighting different phases of it. So thank a farmer. Thank a farmer. Okay. I love you guys. Thanks for hanging out with me today. G-Man, I forgot to say thank you. I got to take a picture. I'll wear it next time. G-Man sent me a McMaga visor, which I died laughing opening this box up, and it's so funny. I have to, it looks really terrible on me, actually, but I'm going to wear it for you, G-Man. Thank you so much. Very funny gift. I love it. G-Man gave a super chat for $5 and says, I grew up in a small farm town, and let me tell you, some of them are real dicks. I'm sure they are. They're people just like anyone. I'm sure they are. Okay. Awesome one says, ciao, Merry Christmas, y'all, and Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, y'all. Thank a farmer. I will see you on Monday. I hope you have a great weekend. And if you like the show, please consider leaving a comment below or hitting the like button. That helps our algorithm. And I'll see you guys later. Appreciate you.